You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
Before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you a little bit about our current sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. As you well know, if you've been following This is Oklahoma, they've been a huge part of this podcast. So this podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling an Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof. Also, for the podcast, a new sponsor this year that's just come on board and super excited to announce RCB Bank. Since 1936, RCB Bank has offered progressive products and a friendly service. Come in today to find out more about their loan promotion on new, used, refinanced cars, boats, campers, and ATVs. Visit RCB Bank to learn more. RCB Bank, that's my bank. With approved credit, restrictions apply. Now, let's get into today's episode. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode down at the Bedford studio today with Miranda Hodge. We've known each other for a while, and we've always talked about doing a podcast. Mm-hmm. I'm glad we're finally doing it.
I know. I'm so glad that we're finally doing it.
It's been so long. We had like a bunch of stuff happen, and the pandemic, and then events, and you got a new job, and all this cool stuff has been happening, which I'm excited to dive into today. But yeah, I guess update. I mean, what's going on? How's things? And what's happened since the last time I guess I saw you?
Yeah, so most people probably know me as Bevographer, which stands for beverage photographer. So for a while, I was just going around and taking delicious pictures of cocktails and food around town and for a few publications. And I'm still doing that a little bit on the side, but for the most part, I was offered a job by the city that I live in, Del City, to come on and start their marketing program and to help them get grants for the city. So it's just a really exciting and busy time.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many things that we can talk about.
I know.
Okay, so let's take it way back.
Okay.
Grew up in Del City, born and raised in that area or not?
No, I was actually born and raised in Texas in a small town called Borger, which is outside of Amarillo.
Okay.
And then moved all around. I lived in Seattle and Portland and lived in India, and then kept ending back up in Dallas, as you do as a Texan. You end up in one of three cities usually.
Yeah.
And then I met my husband on Instagram, and from there we moved to Montana, and then back to Seattle for me, and then we moved to OKC. He's originally from Broken Arrow.
Okay.
So OKC is like the in-between for us.
Yeah. So there's so many cool places you just mentioned.
I know, a lot.
So growing up out in Texas, and so what brings you... So tell me about going through school and getting into photography and enjoying that part, right? Where do we go from like, you know, growing up to like graduation?
So growing up, I think because I was in a small town, I was afforded a lot of opportunities that I wouldn't have had necessarily in a big city. That whole, you know, big fish, small pond kind of thing. So I would just express interest in something, and somebody in the community would figure out a way for me to get it. And so I started doing photography with film. And just had a lot of film cameras. People would hear that I was interested in it and just give me their camera, which was really amazing. And then my best friend's dad he had a really nice Canon, and he would let us use that. He did a lot of sports photography, so he had the extra long zoom lenses that were a lot of fun to play with. So he would let me and my best friend Megan go out and shoot for fun occasionally with his gear.
That's really nice of him to lend you, like, not cheap stuff, right? No. I mean, those lenses are very expensive.
I still cannot believe that he let a 17-year-old run around town with his, I mean, easily, you know, I would say $5,000 to $7,000 worth of gear.
Yeah.
And so just crazy to me. So shout out.
So like you've always kind of expressed an interest in photography then.
Yeah. And then when I went to college, my degree was in cross-cultural studies.
Okay.
And I minored in art, which included photography.
Yeah. Where did you go to college?
Howard Payne University. It's a tiny, tiny Baptist school out by Abilene.
Okay, so Okay, so from there then, how do you get to traveling to all these other places?
Well, my cross-cultural studies degree, part of it is that I had to learn how to travel on my own and plan trips and things like that. So I kind of caught the travel bug, and really just I spent a summer in Amman, Jordan, and just fell in love with it, and just wanted to experience other cultures. So I had a family in Portland who very kindly picked me up. So Tony and Amy Chris, shout out.
Yeah. Love
them so much. And they opened up their house to me and let me live in Portland for just dirt cheap. And which is just, even back then, it was kind of insane to think about. But Portland wasn't as popular as what it was now. Right. So it still was a little bit more affordable. But now there's just no way that I could afford to live there.
Yeah. So traveling around for your degree then, just kind of a perfect excuse to say, hey, I've got to travel. I'm not, it's my degree, right? What are like the main things that, I guess, stigmas that kind of like you got over and things that you learned, and just from your time traveling?
Oh, yeah. So when you grow up in small town Texas, as you can imagine, there's a lot of bias there. Yeah. And so whether that's racial or, just even the LGBT community, I didn't meet my first openly gay person until I was 22.
Yeah.
And so I assumed there were a couple of people who I went to college with who I assumed probably were in the gay community, but because we went to a Baptist school, they were not out.
Right.
Now they are. They're married. It's fantastic. I love them to pieces.
Yeah.
But I had to relearn and re-educate myself on how to approach people with kindness and not be judgmental towards them, honestly.
Right.
And I say that with all the love in the world to my hometown, but there's something about...
That's all you know, right? You grew up in that environment. That's all you know. That's the way it is. It's the way it's always been. And it's just like, you don't know what the outside world is like.
Exactly. And so being able to go out and go into other cultures, I even had a bias, I think like a lot of Americans did, especially during the Iraq War, towards Muslims and people from the Middle East in general. And so going and meeting them and actually having face-to-face conversations just changed my worldview.
Yeah.
And so just figuring out, they are humans too. They're not this like crazy person who wants to kill me. No, they are inviting me into their homes. They're giving me food.
Yeah.
They are treating me with such love and kindness, even though, I met people who were displaced by the Iraq War, and they knew that I was American, and like we had gone in and invaded their homes, bombed out their, through the process of war, and just being able to come back and say, I love you because you are a human, and I'm going to show you that love by inviting you into my home, even though my original home was destroyed.
Yeah.
And so just the amount of love and kindness that they showed me just really expanded my worldview and really helped me to see and appreciate their culture and who they were.
Yeah. Places that you miss? Where would you go back to if you could go back?
Oh, gosh. I would probably go back to England, honestly. My best friend, Harriet, is from there. And I would love to see her again. She now has a baby, and I haven't met her baby.
Yeah.
His name is Barnaby. He's the cutest little thing. And so I would really love to go back to England. I think I would love to go back and visit Amman again. It's just such a beautiful city. Gosh. I would probably go back and visit India again, maybe explore more of Southeast Asia.
What was India kind of like very kind of just crazy and chaotic, like you kind of see in media and, wherever you see it, it's like there always seems to be something going on. There's people everywhere, and it's it gives me serious anxiety because I hate like traveling to places I don't know much about, and it would, I can't imagine what it was like going there solo, right? And you're like, this is chaos.
Yeah, there was definite culture shock when I went there. So like the first week that I was there, it is an attack of every sense that you have. So you just have an overload of smells and senses, just all the noise. It just creates so much chaos. And so I am I am an introvert, really. And so just figuring out how I could recharge while being surrounded by people constantly was the biggest struggle for me. But I mean, I wouldn't trade that experience for anything, because I met some people. I have friends in New Zealand. I met Harriet there. I have some friends in Mexico and Ireland, and really just all over the world, Germany. And I wouldn't have been able to have that experience and meet those people had I not gone.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously the food as well, right? All these different tastes that you're tasting around the world, and like, I mean, I'm not a fan of hot food and spicy food, but they know how to cook it.
Oh yeah, it's so delicious. But that was the first sign for me that I was maybe allergic to nightshades, which is a whole other conversation. But yeah, I was sick the entire time there, and it wasn't until we got back and I got tested.
You realized what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's mad, isn't it? But you have I think you have all this experience, right? And that's the greatest thing from it. And I tell kind of as many people who will listen, is like, once you graduate, don't get a job straight away. You've got so much time. Like, just go explore, go have fun, go travel if you can, even if it's just around the States, right? Jump in your car and drive around, and just go see life outside of your town, outside of your bubble. Even if you travel to university, like go see something completely different, and gives you so much experience and so much more world view. And like I said, you make lifelong friends from it that are from around the world as well.
Yeah, and I know that I had a lot of privilege in being able to do those experiences, but when I graduated, it was also the recession, so I didn't have a job. I didn't really have a choice.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, so I was just like, well, I can make minimum wage and stay in my hometown, or I can make minimum wage and go to Portland. And so I chose the option of going to Portland and working at Starbucks in Portland as opposed to Starbucks in Amarillo.
Yeah, exactly. So all this travel's going on. You're having a great time. You know, you're learning about your degree, and I assume you're taking photos the whole time as well. You know, what gets you into, I guess, like, you know, when you get back, where do you meet Chris?
Oh, where? Okay, so...
Is this like, where is that on the timeline?
Yeah, so that was after Portland, after India. I had kind of moved back to Dallas and said, okay, I'm settling down. And that was when I first started getting into marketing. Okay. I had just finished the JFK 50th Memorial, running that event, and helping to run it. I didn't run the whole thing, as you can imagine. That was a really big production. Deal, yeah. But yeah, so Chris, I had met him. I was a part of one of the Instagram communities. Did you ever do the Insta walks or whatever?
I was probably
Insta meets. That's what they're called.
Was it Michael set those up? Michael Weideman did a couple of those. Maybe. I'm
not sure. And
they were like, I do remember. Okay, no, not here then. I remember the ones here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, there's an Insta Meet community in Dallas that I became a part of, and they went to Tulsa because one of Chris's best friend, Laura, she's Insta famous, as you might say. So they wanted to meet her, and Chris and Laura were working together and were friends, and so Laura told him to go. So then my friends posted pictures of Chris.
Gotcha.
And I thought that he was real cute, so I started following him. Yeah. He started following me, and this was before DMs. Yeah. And so Chris was actually my very first DM.
Very, very early Instagram then, if it was no DMs. Right?
Yeah.
Like, people listening are like, what?
What?
There was
no
DMs?
I know. Back in my day, you couldn't just message people.
Exactly. Send a carrier pigeon and write letters. That's really cool, because Chris obviously has a background in marketing too, right?
Yeah, so he was doing video and production for one of the big churches there. Yeah. So, yeah.
Sweet. So, design. So you guys meet, and I guess you figure out, hey, we're going to move to Oklahoma City, and you come up here, and I guess how do you get into like taking photos of drinks?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, you know, you travel, because from people listening to this, they think, oh, travel photography is a natural thing for you to get into with your degree and everything. And, and you're like, no, I take photos of drinks. And I've realized it's very hard to do that.
It is. It was more of a challenge to myself. I wanted to have a lot of fun. So I was working at Big Wing, which is a marketing agency here in Oklahoma City. It's a part of the Oklahoman. And so when I was working for them, I just wrote blogs and created content all the time. And so I wanted a creative outlet for myself. And so we were at Empire Slice House, actually, and it was in their new location on their patio, and they had these string lights, and we had we bought some cocktails, and I just happened to have my camera with me, and I took some really great shots of my husband pouring a beer on their patio, and it just looked really cool. Yeah. So then I was sitting there, and I said, I need a creative outlet, and my husband and I started talking about it, and we came up with the name Bevographer, and so then just created an Instagram just all about beverages that I was drinking around town.
And you're super excited because the handle is available, right? That's the
big
first
thing.
Breakthrough, isn't it? It's like, hey, we have this name. Is it available on social media?
Yeah.
So then I guess that became a hobby that turned into a business.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And I kind of covered this a little bit in my creative morning talk, so I won't go over the whole thing. But I lost my job at Big Wing because they were bought out. And so I was one of the people who was let go. And so I was immediately just kind of forced into the situation. Okay, either I'm going to, make this work for myself, or I'm going to go out and find another job. And so I decided to give it a go.
Yeah. So then you just start sending messages out to people and saying, hey, like, this is what I do. Local restaurants, local businesses. Great for you because the restaurant scene is still growing and people need content, right? Like, that's the great thing now is they need photos.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with me working at the Oklahoman, I kind of had a leg up in the industry a little bit. And I was also starting to get involved with the foodie community here in OKC. And so I already kind of had those industry contacts. And so just, started putting my name out there and tagging people in my photos. And
it's amazing the power of social media, isn't it? Like the opportunities that you can get from it if you put a little bit of effort in and you post good photos or good content. And we wouldn't be doing this if I didn't have a social media page. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. I was able to get national recognition. I had a magazine reach out just a couple of weeks ago to ask if they could use one of my pictures. Yeah. And this was a national publication. I was like, okay,
it's the greatest feeling ever.
Yeah,
right?
like I've been very quiet on my Instagram. And so for them to still be taking notice of this is actually really fascinating to me.
So you've recently, like last year, released a book. So where does that idea come in? Was that like Chris being the marketing brain that he has and your marketing brain just like, hang on, what else can we do with this?
Yeah. Well, it kind of started because of COVID-19 and the shutdown. And so all of a sudden, all of my restaurant clients couldn't really afford, they had to let go of their employees. They're not going to, do photography. And so just to keep myself busy, really, I started doing a cocktail a day. And so then we were talking and it just kind of came out like, what if we turn this into a book? And I've always wanted to write a book. This wasn't quite the book that I imagined. I imagined something like, a fictional story or a children's book. Right. But, a cocktail book. So, my mom's proud of me.
Yeah, exactly. But it's informational, right? So you've got like, I guess all the photos in there and ingredients and hey, I've done this and...
Yeah, so all the cocktails are my recipes. All the photos are mine. All the design of the book is mine. And so looking back, I think I would prefer to have more professional people design the book. But I'm really proud of, what I was able to put out in less than a year.
Yeah, it came at a great time, right? For people who are stuck at home and they're like, hang on, if I can make this myself, I also enjoy making things and why not? Right?
Yeah.
And then you take them through that journey, and I'm sure you get so many messages of people saying, hey, I just made this one. This is so good. And
I really encourage people when they pick up my book to make the cocktails their own. That's the exciting thing about being a home bartender that I think is a little bit easier than doing it professionally. Because if you're doing it professionally, handing it off to a customer, if it's bad, then that looks really bad for you and your restaurant, right? But if you're making it at home for yourself or maybe your significant significant other family or friends, then if it's bad, then you can be like, yeah, this sucked, and throw it out and make something else. So there's much less pressure for you to experiment. And so, I mean, I had last year I had a bunch of weeds in my yard, and so I just went out and picked up all the dandelions and made it into a cocktail, as you do.
That's my kind of gardening right there.
Yeah.
That's about as far as the extent of my gardening goes. I'll mow the grass and I'll pick weeds, and I will not do anything else.
Well, if you have dandelions that are starting to sprout up and you haven't sprayed any chemicals on them, then you can absolutely make a cocktail. Yeah.
God, so awesome. I bet you had so much fun experimenting, trying to get, cutting it down to what drinks you want to put in there and everything, right? Like and to turn it around in a year and post, put it out there and have help from local bookstores at Full Circle?
Yeah, so Full Circle, Commonplace, Literati, all the OKC local bookshops have put my books in, and then also George's had a few has stocked them. Barkeep is stocking them, so I've just had incredible support from the local community.
Yeah, so all this is going on, and you're like, okay, I've done the book now. I still don't have a job. I need to make money somehow. Were you applying for jobs when this is going on, trying to get something?
Yeah, I was starting to put feelers out there because I realized, at that point, the COVID cases were starting to spike. We hadn't heard anything back from, there was rumors about a vaccine coming, but there wasn't anything concrete. And so there's just... I wasn't sure when it was going to happen, and we had bills to pay, and so I needed something to do. And I'm not the type of person who likes to sit on my hands either. I have to do something with my life. Yeah. So I was applying to jobs, and that's how I landed at Del City. I actually applied to be their Parks and Recreation director just on a whim. I didn't expect for them to call me in at all. I had no qualifications, and so when they called me, I was like, "Are you for real? You want to interview me?" I honestly applied for it because of Parks and Recreation, the TV show. So I thought I can be a real life Leslie Knope. And
we both know Natalie, who works at Parks and Rec in Edmond too, right? And she's like, loves it, does it, has fun doing it, and I'm sure you saw that as well. I'm like, this looks like a lot of fun. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the people that I know who have worked for local government seem to really like it. And so, like Fee, she works for the downtown OKC, and she seems to really love it. And so I wanted to take a chance and start working for my community, I guess. Yeah. So they called me in and interviewed me, and then I got a message from my now boss, and he said, "Hey, listen, you are not getting the Parks and Recreation role." And I was like, "Yeah, obviously." He's like, "You come in and and let's have a conversation." And so I went in, and he said, "So listen, we're really impressed with you. We want to hire you to do marketing. However, I think that we need to do a 50-50 split. Have you ever done grants before?" And I said, "Nope, haven't ever done it." And he's like, "Okay, cool. Well, you up for learning?" And I said, "Yeah, let's do it." And
so they created a role for you.
They created the role for me. Mm-hmm.
That's really cool to have, right? Like to have someone that was like, you know what? Okay, you're not going to do Parks and Rec, but we still value you. We still think that you're going to be really good for us. Let's figure something out. Mm-hmm. Like, that's special. Yeah,
I honestly, to this day, still feel really, I don't know. I'm so honored to be able to have the role that I have with Del City. Yeah. And it's, and selfishly, for myself, because I live in Del City, and that's a whole other story because I was living actually by Lake Hefner. And my realtor said, "Have you ever thought about moving to Del City?" And we said, "Where the heck is Del City?" Yeah. And then we gave her, Barkeep Supply as the marker and said, anything within 15 minutes. Yeah. We have to be able to get to Barkeep within 15 minutes. That's the
non-negotiable.
That's the only non-negotiable that we have. And so it's 10 minutes away from Barkeep. So I was like, well, sure. Let's try it.
That's so cool. So you moved to Del City before you had the job? So you're already living there anyway.
I was already living there. So
you're already a part of the city. And I guess one of the things that came up with, like local government, right? I don't know anything that happens in local government, and writing grants and figuring out where all the money comes from. And for the most part, like people listening as well are probably like, oh, our roads are terrible. We need to do something about it. And how do we do something about it? And all the other stuff that happens. Now you kind of have an insight into all that stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Working in local government has definitely been eye-opening.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that the local government can do. However, there are some things, like for instance, with the tree limb pickup from the ice storm.
Yeah.
That most cities would not be able to afford. It's a multi-million, hundreds of millions of dollars in damage.
Yeah.
And most cities just can't front that. And so we had to rely on FEMA, which is a federal agency, to do the disaster approval. And so once they got that going, I think it was mid to late December is when it finally got approved as a disaster.
All those giant trucks driving around picking up all the limbs.
Yeah, and so we had to make sure that all of everything that we were doing was ready to go so that we could, as soon as they approved it, get going in January. And so that's, I was with everyone because we were getting a lot of complaints. OKC was able to kind of front the money a little bit easier. And so we were getting a lot of complaints about people, when are tree limbs going to get picked up? When are they going to get picked up? And we're like, just be patient. We want to make sure that you don't have to front the cost, because this money has to come from somewhere.
Right.
And so being able to make sure, and I have to give a shout out to, our fire department, our police department, our public works team, and all the admin, because there is a lot of stuff that you don't see going on in the back end that they have to do to make sure that they get that money, that they get that refund from the federal government.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal. And, and you as a taxpayer, we would have to somehow fund that if the federal government didn't pay for it. So it's a really good thing that FEMA came through and, called it a disaster, because then all the cities are able to start getting refunds for all the
Because otherwise
pickup.
you have a lot of unhappy people, because then they've got to pay for it as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not cheap. It's not cheap. And I've learned things like sidewalks. Sidewalks are so expensive. I had no idea. I had no idea how expensive sidewalks were until I started working for a local government. It was like, I'm trying to get a bike trail going on between Eagle Lake and Ray Trent Park, which will connect Del City, to the Oklahoma City trails. And so I'm working with several different agencies, and even Midwest City. I've had conversations with them because they, of course, want this because they need to connect, and we're like the last missing piece. And as I was, trying to get, all the grant money for it and applying for grants, you have to have a budget and you have to, say what each line item is going to be. And so when I was quoting out what the bike path would be, which probably needs to be concrete because it's the most durable, and it was just so expensive. So expensive.
You're like, I was hired to do marketing, not this stuff. I don't want to be doing this stuff, right?
No.
It was when you got the job, you're like, oh, I'm going to be marketing restaurants and businesses, and this will be really cool. Yeah. And now you're like thrown in the deep end and in the grant side of things. And you're like, I have to market us picking up tree limbs instead. Yeah.
But I love it. I honestly, so I do not regret this change at all. I think I'm the type of person that I need to impact my local community. So even though doing the grant side of things is a lot of work, and I have to work with a lot of different people and make sure that all the budgets are, approved. And really, if you think about it, when you're applying for grants, you're kind of marketing your city in a way and saying, hey, pick me, pick us. Like, we need this grant, we need this money, and this is why. And it's just, honestly, it's selling yourself. And a lot of it is also building relationships, which is what I was doing as a photographer, going out into the community and building relationships. So you have to build relationships with those funders. So I've been building relationships, with people like AARP and the Arts Council of Oklahoma, and Team Better Block, and I could go on and on and on, just trying to figure out, hey, how do we, how can I get funding from you to help our residents with these projects. So everything from parks to utilities assistance. I've been, working with all sorts. Community cares. I'm working with them to do utility assistance along with OG&E and ONG. So I've had lots of meetings because we're launching that grant program next week, and so it's a lot going on. Yeah, it's busy, but it's so great.
Well, and to that, what you said earlier, like you get to impact the community, right? You get to see the impact too, right? It's not like some people, they may sponsor something or they may send some money to someone and then they don't see they don't get the reward from it, right? They don't see the impact and the smiling faces and the lives that it changes. So that must be really cool, especially now that you live there as well, right? You're like, I'm part of this community as well. Like it's, you're more invested because you live there as well, which is really cool.
Exactly.
Have you had to use any of your photography kind of skills and background yet?
Yes. So that was one of the things that I did. You talked about, taking pictures of restaurants. So one of the first things I did was I connected with Del City's Chamber of Commerce, and we started doing a small business spotlight program. And so I go out and take pictures of small businesses in Del City. And then we do like a marketing campaign for them. So social media, they get in our email newsletter. We have some billboards that we get to use. And so they get put up onto the billboards. And then I give them the pictures to use in whatever way they want. So they're released for commercial use.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's something that you get to probably really enjoy that more, I guess, because you get to use your creative side and hang out and meet small businesses and again, you're impacting them too, right? Because they're struggling. They got to make their bills, and they. The last thing when you have a small business, you wear a lot of hats, don't you? And the last thing is on your mind probably is social media and posting and content and generating income through that. What about? I think what I was going to say. Were you going to say something then?
Oh yeah, no, I was going to say one of the restaurants that I went and took pictures of, they had no social media account. Yeah. And so I was able to post about them, and they were actually one of the more popular social media posts that I put out. And I think probably because they don't have a social media account. So then everyone's like, oh yes, I love them. They're so great. They're the best. And, it was fantastic to see that engagement and just how much the Del City community embraces them.
I guess now that things are starting to pick up, people are going outside more and engaging, and just like it's kind of more socially, I guess, acceptable to go and hang out with people. Do you have any events planning coming up, big summer plans, stuff like that? So
right now, I know our Parks and Recreation department has started 4 programs, just kind of tentatively. So for seniors, there's a walk in the park so that they can socially distance and be outside and still be able to enjoy each other's company. There's a gardening class, a kids craft class, and a sign language class. And then on top of that, Del City is having their annual Armed Forces Day and Shriners Parade, which is a really big event for Del. I would say it's probably our biggest event. Wow. So we have usually around 100 people participating in the parade. Yeah. And that varies from, the crowd favorites, like the Shriners that come in their little small cars and do tricks and stuff like that. So they're a lot of fun. And then we also have like classic car aficionados who will bring out their, I think there's like a couple club or whatever they'll ride. Yeah. So there's a couple of race cars that are going to be involved, and then there's a special guest I can't talk about, but I'm really excited. For this year, we have someone who's very special that I think everyone's going to love. Now you can't say who they are. Yeah. What was the process like of getting them to come out? Really just building relationships, reaching out to them. And so I just, did you reach out kind of directly? Mm-hmm. That's kind of cool. Yeah. I reached out via email, as you do now these days. And just, said, hey, I would love for you to come and participate in this event. So, what are the dates? Date of it? The day is May 15th. May 15th, okay. Starts at 10 a.m. Coming up very soon. Very soon, so in a couple of weeks. And then 10 a.m. to? Until it ends, usually around noon. Okay. So it's a 2-mile route. You can go on to our Facebook. I have a post pinned that talks about the route, but it's basically from from 15th and Sunny Lane, and then it goes down to 29th Street and turns left and goes down from there.
Yeah. That's going to be so much fun.
Yeah.
Hanging out outside, hopefully you get good weather for it. And people come out and just enjoy, Armed Forces Day and celebrate and hang out.
Yeah, and really just celebrate our heroes, you know, our military families. Del City, it shares a border with Tinker Air Force Base, so we're very proud of our military families and our veterans, and so this is just a really great way to celebrate them and to thank them for their service.
That'd be such a good day. I guess what else is planned? Do you have any? Are you allowed to schedule out yet and plan stuff and?
Yeah, so
for the summer.
I don't have concrete plans for the summer yet, but I am working on a couple other projects within the city. So we have some economic development projects coming on. One of the things I'm really excited about, and I mentioned earlier with AARP and Team Better Block, we are hoping to create a cultural/arts district in Del City, the first one of its kind. So I'm starting to do the planning process for that. That will probably be in October, so TBD. But we'll be working very closely with the business owners. So Castle Rose Studios is kind of I guess you would say the central location for that. And so they are, if you don't know about Castle Rose Studios, they're amazing. They do music and movie productions, so they will do all of the sound for it. And then they also have a small theater space that they were going to open, but then COVID happened. And so, so they're hoping to be able to start having shows there
And
soon.
this is like murals as well and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we want to have murals. We want it to be, we want to have an outdoor stage that would be available year round for us to have concerts and events at. So
super exciting.
Yeah, so it's a long process. So it's obviously not going to be a tomorrow thing. There's a lot of planning that goes into it, and then finding the money. And so I've applied for several grants with that. And so hopefully we'll be able to get some money in and be able to start it sooner than later.
Well, and it seems like it's such a long process, and you get the ball rolling and everything just compounds. And, once you start something and people like you build a reputation, right? So people come to you and they know, this is legit and you've worked hard at it. You're not just kind of throwing ideas out there with no backing to them. And then, in 5-10 years, you have this awesome community with killer public art and a bunch of other cool stuff, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm hoping for. And I will say, Del City, it really does, like what I was talking about earlier, a lot of people don't know where it's at. We're 10 minutes from a Thunder game. It's really close to downtown, a lot closer than what people think. Yeah. And so I think there's a little bit of a reputation problem going on there, and that's something that I'm trying to change, because I am a very proud Del City resident. I love my community. And I think that there's a lot of great things that are coming in the pipeline. And so just, I don't know, there's so much right now. Is like the perfect time for you to move there, honestly. And even as a real estate agent, I'm sure the prices in Del City are much lower than a lot of the places in OKC. So you can buy a house, renovate it to what you want, and you're still going to be cheaper than some of the houses in OKC.
Yeah, there's no way you can. There's a lot of houses that are much more expensive for 10 minutes away from downtown, right? Like you're right. It's and to mention that point, if you get in there now, your house prices should climb, right? Once if you're doing all these cool things, and the community is going to improve and it gets more money through grants and stuff. Well, naturally, if you like investing, you should probably go buy a bunch of houses.
Yeah.
If there's any investors listening, go buy some rent houses in Del City, right? Like it's really cool, and I can see how passionate you are about it, and it's probably something that kind of surprised you, maybe, right? When you got the job, you're like, I really love this. Like, where did that come from? We probably didn't expect that.
Yeah,
Just kind of happy to have a job, but then an opportunity at that point, right? When you're going through COVID, you've been laid off, you've done the book thing, and you're like, okay, now what am I going to do? Right? What's next? So I'm sure that was a really nice surprise. Yeah,
even just when I did my creative morning speech, if you had asked me at that point, because like the whole point of it, about my speech was, how being lost and it being okay to be lost.
Yeah.
And so at one point I talked about, maybe being unemployable. And so for me, it is very surprising how much I love this job. I feel like, I honestly, everyone that I work with at Del City is very passionate about making Del City a great place to live. And we're talking, just from the bottom all the way up to the top. I mean, the mayor is very passionate, and I love working with them. And a lot of our residents are very passionate people and are great spokespeople for the community. And so I think that, I don't know, this is such a surprising thing, like what you were saying, for me to just move there, fall in love with the community, and then, take on the job with the city. It's just really surprising how much I love it. My very first day was the ice storm, was the day of the ice storm.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, exactly. Throw me into the deep end. Yeah. And so I had to learn very quickly how to do emergency communications, which, I'm in marketing and I've had to put out, press releases and stuff like that before, but nothing to this extent where you're having to say, okay, this could be a life or death situation for a family if they don't get this information.
Yeah. Wow. So, that's crazy. You never think of it like that, do you? You never think it's going to be to that extent, but that's really cool. So I will post a link in the description to the Creative Mornings talk that you gave, because I think that's a lot of value in that for anyone listening. But how can people find you? And then I guess is there a website that they can go to for Del City as well? Yeah.
So right now you can find me on Instagram, and that's Bevographer, Bevographer. It's a lot to spell. It's a mouthful, but think beverage photographer and you got it.
You got it.
So you can find all of my cocktails and beverage photography there. And then for Del City, you can find us at cityofdelcity.com or simply delcity.gov.
Yeah.
And that website is actually going to change very soon. I'm working on updating it and making it a lot easier for people to find things. So don't judge its 90s appearance. Great things are coming, I promise.
Well, I'm sure people of Del City and people who go to that website will appreciate it when it's done, because government websites are a nightmare to try and navigate, aren't they?
Yeah.
Especially if they haven't been done right.
Yeah, and so the great thing about, somebody within the city building it is that I'll be able to then update it as it needs to. And so if there's a problem or if somebody's having trouble finding something, I'll be able to say, okay, let's, do a quick UX and figure out what's going on and make it easier for our residents.
Super exciting, bringing it to the new age. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming down. This is super exciting. I'm glad we finally got to do a podcast.
Yeah, me too.
It's probably been like 2 years. When was your Creative Mornings talk? It was December, right?
Yeah, it was
at Halls.
Yep, December in Hall. It was December or January at Halls. It was cold.
Yeah, it was December of 18, I think.
Okay.
Because I did mine the January of 19.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You did yours right after me.
Which is so long ago.
I know.
Crazy.
The world has changed.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, again, thanks for coming down. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hopefully people listening to this get some value from it. They go to, I'll post a link to the books to get the book as well. If they want to make home cocktails, they can go do that. And then, like I said, if they want to listen to Creative Mornings talk, which was at Hall's Pizza, was awesome. So I'll post the link to that. But for everyone listening, I guess we will catch you next episode. Cheers. This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling an Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof. Also, huge shout out to RCB Bank for jumping on board to be a sponsor. RCB Bank's loan promotion is here for a limited time. Head into any of their 40 Oklahoma locations to get as low as 1.79 APR on your next car, boat, camper, or ATV. Apply online at rcbbank.com. RCB Bank, that's my bank. Rate and finance with approved credit. Restrictions apply. And member FDIC. Huge shout out to my sponsors. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next episode. Cheers.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.